Greetings to everyone who is watching us today on ADAU TV. We are providing lessons as usually online in order to cover your gap in education. Of course, it's not possible 100% to cover that needs, but still we try to theoretically share some information with you. My name is Fagan Agaev and I'm a teacher at the Department of Horticulture. And the subject that I'm going to present to you is prepared for the students of third year of education, Faculty of Agronomy and Agronomy Specialization. We're going to talk today about the hydroponic method of growing of plants and also about different substrates and growing media that is available worldwide. Before moving forward, I'd like to tell you that some people, some growers, scientists see hydroponics as a future of agriculture. The content that we will talk about today is general principles of hydroponics, why we need hydroponics, where it started, what is advantage and disadvantage. Also we'll touch types of growing media, we'll talk about types available worldwide and what's the best and negative in these different growing media types. And we'll look maybe not in detail, because for detailed practices we use usually the lab lessons. But today you will get more or less theoretical knowledge about nutrient solutions, because nutrient solutions is the heart of the hydroponic system. For this lesson, I have used some material that is widely available online, and this is mostly the internet resources. And this information is available and have been taken from the universities worldwide. And they are containing much information about hydroponics and how to run and organize the operations in hydroponics growing. So, let's think. What is hydroponics and why the hydroponics is called the future of agriculture? The hydroponics basically is helping us to resolve an issue of soil-related problems. So we know that most of the plants that we are growing today, we grow in the soil, and we have problems with salinity, we have problems with disease and infections, we have limitations with water, and hydroponics gives us a chance to use minimum water and no soil, and by provision sufficient nutrient-rich water to help plant to grow. So, as you may know, everything started sometime, and we should look where hydroponics is taking its beginning. So hydroponics is not an issue that has been raised by the scientists and growers only for the last 30-40 years. Hydroponics has deep roots, and if we look at the history of hydroponics, we can see that even 600 years before century, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon can be called as the first primary example of soil-less growing, where ancient people were growing plants that were hanging on the walls of the construction, and by running the water in between the roots, the plants were growing under the sun and in the open air. Later on, in our century, only the Aztecs has started to use the practice of floating rafts. But the major difference was that Aztecs still were filling those rafts with soil and were placing plants into that soil, while growing roots were passing that soil layer and reaching the water. And while floating in the river, they were getting necessary nutrients from the water, because water were passing through different regions and were taking with itself a lot of nutrients. This is another example in history how the hydroponics were used by the people. Later on, very close to our years, centuries, in the mid of 17th century, Jan Baptist Helmont, the Belgian Holland scientist, has initiated an experience where he have taken a small willow tree that was weighted and was weighing 2.3 kilogram, and then he has taken around 90 kilogram of dry soil, and during 5 years he was just irrigating this soil with a willow tree, and after 5 years, without any additional nutrition provided, he reached the level when his willow tree were measured as 77 kilogram. It had 77 kilogram weight, while in the beginning it was only 2.5 kilogram. So the dry soil also was measured, but the amount of dry soil was staying the same. As you could see, 90 kilogram in each version. So people over the years were trying to understand the relationship between the water and the nutrients, between the water, nutrient-rich water and plant. So the very big step towards present modern hydroponics was done. Step was taken by the two scientists, German scientists, Julius von Sachs and Wilhelm Knopp. These two scientists were working very hardly in the process of trying to find how the different substrates, alternative substrates, are reflecting the plant growth. Please remember this man, Wilhelm Knopp. I will touch his name, I will get to him again later. So later on, another scientist, Hoagland, in 1920, was the first person who grown different variety of plant species, and he has been the first scientist who has learned the correlation and relationship of pH to plants, and also the necessity of free oxygen for the plant roots. Please remember him also, because these two guys, Hoagland and Knopp, were also the chemists and presently used different systems were based on their calculations. These two people, two scientists, has given start for most of the hydroponically related calculations. The next one, the person who lived in US, but who named firstly the process hydroponics, was William Garrick. In his laboratory, he were able to pass the stage of experimenting, and he was the first person who introduced the commercial viable crop production without soil. In his experiment, he was able to grow tomato plant and different other plants very tall. For example, in this case, he has grown a plant with 7 meters long, just using mineral nutrients. So the William Garrick is also called as a father of hydroponics. Now you can see how he was doing his experiments. He was firstly, as I said, introducing the commercially viable tomato production test, and he was the first person who has opened the advantages of hydroponics for agriculture. Later, during Second World War, the US Army was using hydroponics advantage while it was located in Iceland. You know that Iceland has a very limited soil, and it has a very difficult weather conditions, while hydroponics with alternative substrates helped the US soldiers to produce enough vegetables in order to provide the necessary amount of vegetables for the US Army. But we should remember that if in the soil, while growing in the soil, we have a kind of buffer that stops us from losing the plant during the growth, in the case with hydroponics, we don't have that present in our hands. So our nutrient solutions should be very correctly calculated. Our nutrient solutions should be under control. So I have highlighted for you the total growing control. It is very important, because if you are not controlling the nutrients, it will definitely affect the amount of nutrients. It will definitely affect the disease on your plants. For example, I can give you example. If you will not follow the indicators of EC or pH, for example, they will result in different, for example, if pH will be high, it will lead to the start of fusarium. If you will have increased EC in combination with very wet alternative substrates, that will lead to the start of rots, different kind of rots. Also, the nutrient levels. The nutrients also will lead and attract different insects if you will be overusing different nutrients. So before going into the details of hydroponics, now when we finished with history of hydroponics, I would like to tell you about the structure and construction of hydroponic systems. All world-known hydroponic systems is divided into two main groups. One of them is an open hydroponic system, and the second is a closed hydroponic system. Even from the names, you could see that in one case, the plants and roots is using the solution, and then this solution is just left out and we just lost that solution. You can see it on this diagram very well. For example, on the left side, you can see the open cycle system where nutrient solution is provided to the plant, but after it's used, it's channeled for drainage and it's drained out. But in the second, on the right side, you can see that closed system where nutrient solution is provided to the plant, and then through the drainage it collected and accumulated and it's given back to the plant. Of course, I will tell you about this later, not all the drainage water should be used, and I will tell you about it later. The main principle of hydroponic system is that all the nutrients is given in solution. So you cannot give just ordinary fertilizers to the system. You need very well-known water-soluble fertilizers in order for them to be soluble in the water and provided in solution form. But in order to provide that solution to the roots of the plants, you need to have a pump in the system. And this pump is playing the role that brings the water to the plant roots and also fills up the space where these plants are located. Due to this availability of pumps, this system is very vulnerable to the electricity supply, and you need to have electricity, constant electricity supply in order to have your system running very well. So advantage of hydroponic system is that we can use and establish hydroponic system in any place without worrying about the temperature control. Also, use of hydroponic system is reduce the evaporative water, so we are able to save the water, and from that point of view, hydroponics is very much appropriate to be used in the areas where we have limitations with the water access. Another advantage of using the hydroponics is that it reduces the disease, and you are able to control the pest and disease infestations. In addition to this, we may of course add that hydroponics is letting us to use higher density of plants per square meter, and higher density of plants per square meter is in the end results with a better yield and increased yields of products that we are going to produce. In addition to all of this, another advantage of hydroponics is that we can use smaller space with limited land available for growing, and that land could not be very arable land, could not be very useful land for the agriculture. And we can construct, we may construct hydroponic tanks or hydroponic places where we can, hydroponic rafts where we can grow our plants. Also, it is very suitable for the mechanization, what is minimizes the role of the human being and it minimizes the possibility for mistakes while running the system, and also while mixing the different ingredients and fertilizers. Another best advantage is that we are able to regulate and provide oxygenization. As you remember, in Hoagland and Arnon, in 1920, he has learned, he has studied the effect of free oxygenation around the root system. And he has mentioned that it is very important for the optimal growth of plants during the coming development stages. So, major advantage of hydroponic is that we isolate plant from the soil and minimize the effect of soil on the plant. So by this minimization, we are able to control all the procedures, all the processes that we are running, and keep the processes under our direct and immediate control for and being able to affect it, to change it towards direction that we need. But as you now, everything has its own disadvantage. It's not all advantages available in this world. So we should also mention the two main disadvantages that hydroponic system has. The first of it is that hydroponics requires big capital investments. Big capital investments is something what our growers or our investors should look at before starting this investment, because otherwise in the middle of the way they can face with the problems. Also, the higher capital costs is increased if there is some energy used for heating or for cooling, and it is increasing. And if you remember from the previous lessons, the heating costs sometimes even contain around 50% of the production cost of vegetables grown in a greenhouse. So all in all of this is affecting and making it disadvantage if the investor has not enough capital to invest. Another disadvantage is that people are using so updated knowledge that they need always to be upgraded. Otherwise, the knowledge no enough knowledge, limited knowledge, will not let to run the system very properly. Of course, another disadvantage is that not all the crops could be grown in the hydroponic greenhouses. That not means that you cannot grow them. No, technically you can grow, of course, but from a commercial point of view, those plants are not commercially viable. So you need to find a commercially viable crop for production in your hydroponic system. And one of that kind of crops is tomato. That's why, from this point of view, tomato production and hydroponic development in Azerbaijan could be a good task for us agriculture people, also for agriculture ministry, to look more at, because even so it is high capital investment demanding activity, but it has very high return on investment. So if we will not value all these political issues, for example, our main market for tomatoes is Russian market, and you know some political issues has happened lastly, but still we need to find alternative markets for trade and export, and hydroponic greenhouse production, hydroponically produced vegetables has a very big potential for the future exports. Said all of this, we should remember that nutrient solution is not enough to prepare and to give. Of course, you need to know what to prepare and when to give. And in order to achieve the better result, because we again should always have in mind that it should be commercially viable, we should remember that all our nutrient solutions should fit the needs of plant growth. So in my example with tomato, common practice that tomato has 5 stages of development. Some cases, first 2 is joined together. And in general, we can say that the 4 main stages is, and each stage, as you can see, has its period, its length. In total, gives us the total vegetation period. And of course, the vegetation periods in days for each development stage may change due to cultivar and varieties. But as an example, before you start to prepare your nutrient solution, you need to know what is your plant's development stage and what stage you are now, and what should be the ingredient content in your nutrient solution. So, stages of vegetative growth, flowering, fruit formation, and maturing of fruit. As I already mentioned earlier, in order to prepare all the nutrient solutions, we need to use water-soluble fertilizers. These fertilizers are not the same that we are using for the soil growing, because you know soil grown fertilizers has together with itself other content that is trying to hold it together and also stays in the soil. But in this system with hydroponics, you cannot use it, because otherwise it will stay in the system, it will plug the system, it will plug your drip irrigation system, etc. So basically, this is same as from your other lessons. Basically, all nutrients are divided in 2 main groups. One of them is micronutrients and another one is micronutrients. macronutrients and micronutrients. Amongst macronutrients we should mention nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, chloride. Amongst micronutrients used in the hydroponic system is iron, boron, manganese, copper, molybdenum, and zinc. So, as you could see, macronutrients are those which is used by the plant in a bigger portions, and micronutrients is given in smaller portions in grams and milligrams. You will see why we have divided in two main groups. As I said, the provision of nutrient solutions based on the plant growth is helping us to achieve optimal growth and development during the vegetation period, and in the end gives us very productive plant with a very tasty fruits. As I already mentioned, stage of development of tomato is divided mainly on four main groups. Some growers divided first, joining first two groups, and from a point of view of treatment, because during that germination stage, which is stage 0, plants does not require much nitrification, does not require much fertilization. So this first stage is stage when grower could be a bit relaxed and just provide the necessary temperature, humidity, and irrigation water in order to let the plant to seed to germinate. On stage 1, everything starts, and stage 1 is stage when everything starts from cotyledons up to the first 2 flower truss. So, open flower truss on the plant that has from 9 to 15 leaves at that stage is marked as a stage 1. Stage 2 starts when plant has open truss from 3 open truss to 5 open truss and open flower truss, and already has from 18 to 24 leaves on the plant. And last stage starts from 5th open truss, flower open truss, up to the end of the plant growing. So at that stage, all growing after the 5th open truss is nominated as stage 3. Why, you may ask, why we need this division? Why we need all of this stage 1, 2, 3, what we will look at, and how that affects the plant? So, by knowing this, we may regulate that you should remember that young plants require low nutrient concentration, because with a higher nutrient concentration they will be pushed towards growing vegetatively. They will be more growing in leaves, in stems, etc., while we need as soon as possible to get them flowering truss, and as close as they will be to the top layer of soil, formed very closer to the top layer of soil, that is our primary interest. So at the fruiting stage, early fruiting stage, you can see that specific nutrients that we need is nitrogen, calcium, and potassium. Otherwise, fruits will be smaller or fruits will be less in number. So maturing plants require different nutrients in order to provide development of fruits and their filling and the taste. So by knowing this, we can also regulate the amounts of fertilizers that we are providing to the plant and save extra fertilizer cost that we will not use for particular stage when our plants does not need that fertilizer. Otherwise, this fertilizer will stay in the substrates or will be just washed out, and through the open system we will lose that water. For example, here on the picture, I'd like to share with you, in this plant, the first open truss, flower truss that was pollinated, was formed very higher from the top layer of the substrate, and it is resulted only with two tomatoes, while at this stage it should have at least 5 to 6 already formed tomato fruits. So this tells us that we have overused nitrogen, and it makes plant over vegetative. It results in thick stems and burly and cooled leaves. So experienced growers, while they are visiting different greenhouses, they first look at the leaves, they look at the stems, they look at the number of fruits on each truss, they look at what level first truss has been formed, etc. So all of this is affected by the non-correct application of substrates, of nutrient solutions. So the world is developing, everything is moving ahead, and over the last 20-25 years, people were trying different nutrient solutions for different plants. As because our primary example is tomato, I'm presenting to you the table that was more or less optimized for the tomato growing in the hydroponic system. And as you could see, it's prepared in two versions for 3-stage and 4-stage hydroponic application. As you could see here, all the nutrients, primary nutrients, has been shown, and the amounts of each nutrient per stage. For example, at stage 1, the amount of potassium is 144 milligrams per liter. For example, magnesium, for example, calcium, etc. required for this first stage. And what is our first stage? Going back from cotyledon emergence up to second truss with open flowers. So as plant is growing, as plant is maturing, we increasing the numbers. You see, from 144 to 350. Same with calcium. And if you look at the fourth stage, it's also numbers have been presented. All the micronutrients is given in milligrams, of course, and in some cases in grams. You can see it: chlorine, chloride, iron, magnesium, zinc, etc. So we need to measure all of this very carefully before mixing to the system. But we should remember that the system is not contains just the fertilizer. We need the water, and the quality of water that we are using for the nutrient solution preparation is very important. Your water source should be very reliable, should have less salt in it, should have proper pH level. In order to be possible for the water-soluble fertilizer components to be easily mixed and to not affect the nutrient solution in the system. So mainly in the big commercial farms, you can see the big reservoirs like this. You can see on the picture. This is a water reservoir because your farm should be self-sustainable. Your farm water source should be reliable. You cannot stop growing if there is no sufficient amount of water. You cannot stop running your hydroponic system because we told that this system is very vulnerable. It is dependent on nutrient solutions. So you should test your water, you should test your water indicators and see what source do you have. In some cases, in order to minimize the effect of water source, some of the commercial growers also start an implementation of the systems for collection of the rainwater. So that rainwater is also purifying the system and is very well for the plants. Usually the hydroponic system has this section where we can see the big tanks where stock A, stock B and stock C is present. Stock C, even from the name, is stock C where acids are collected, and acids are very important in order to purify the system, in order to reduce the alkalinity of the system. You know, in our case, for example, tomato for the system requires pH indicator of 5.5, 6, 6.2, and in case if you have too alkaline water coming in or too alkaline final nutrient solution, then you can soften it by adding some acids into the system. But you may ask the question, what is the difference between stock A and stock B? Stock A and stock B is helping to keep separately phosphates and calcium. Otherwise, getting into the reaction, they may destroy the system, they may plague the system, and they will not give necessary effect on what we are doing. So the system need to have filters. At least 2 filters are required because filtering is very important. Otherwise, small parcels, small particles may plug your drainage lines. Also, it should have fertigator station where computerized program based on your provided numbers will mix the necessary amounts of different stock solutions in order to make a final nutrient solution. Right now, in a big commercial hydroponic farms, owners start to buy and implement concentrated stock solutions. This helps them to reduce time for preparation of the final solution. This helps them to save fertilizers that they buy during the storing. Also, it saves them space where they are collecting and storing their concentrated solution. But you should always remember that concentrated solutions is 100 times stronger than the final solution. So you should, while making calculations, you should purify, dilute it with ordinary water in order to get the final solution for you. Before going to this table, I'd like to demonstrate to you these 2 equipment. This is very practical equipment. You remember I told you already, mentioned you that you need to check your level of pH in the water source and also your level of pH in the final nutrient solution before providing it to the system and at the end when you will collect your drainage. So these two equipments, one is pH measure equipment. You can see it's just, you can put it in the solutions that you are going to provide, and then it will tell you what is pH level of your, nutrient solution. After each use, you need to wash it in pure water in order to clean the operative part. And also the second one is TDS meter. That is also measuring the amount of dissolved salts in the system, total amount of dissolved salts in the system. It also could be changed to EC. We have a specific formula for that, and we can calculate how much EC it will have, the system. Also, you can measure a temperature in the system. By using this, of course, there are different many modifications. You can see it here. Sorry. Different many modifications, it comes later. Different many modifications of this equipment that you can use, and they are very handy and very practical in use. So every grower who is dealing with hydroponics should have this kind of equipment. So, as you could see, out of these nutrients provided or suggested, and the amounts of each nutrient suggested, final table by split of nutrients in different tanks, for example tank 1 and tank 2, as you can see the sulfates and phosphates in one tank, and calcium nitrates and chloride in another tank in order to not make them get in contact, and micronutrients in separate tanks. They are mixed. And based on different stages, different amounts is provided for your attention. So this, of course, is average, optimal, based on results available today. But of course, every grower, every farm owner should be adapting it or should be changing it according to the own farm, according to the needs of his own plant, and the signs of deficiency that he can see on leaves of his plants. So this is water-soluble fertilizers that used in a hydroponic system. As you can see, they contain different amounts of different nutrients. So they could be as in powder and also as liquid. In this case, these are micronutrients that is given in grams and milligrams. So because of that, they are in smaller buckets. As I already told, the big commercial greenhouses, hydroponic greenhouses, use concentrated stock solutions. But the small growers, like we are today at the Agrarian University, in our greenhouses, we use mainly water-soluble versions of fertilizers. We carefully measure them because, as you've seen in the tabella, some of them in grams and milligrams. We should carefully measure them, and then carefully mix them according to the order that we have in our hands. Otherwise, if we'll measure them not by weight and by eyes, then changes in the system may occur. Of course, while using different solutions, different ingredients, pouring in and out, your EC and pH will be changing. But there are ways how to adjust it. For example, in case with pH, I already said you should use some acids. Also, in order to not let the pH in the system to bump up and down very frequently, commercially available special chemicals called buffers. You can add them into the system, and that system will last longer, and you don't need to check it every week or every day. So this is basics of hydroponics, what you should look at, why you should do it. And over the years, as I said, world scientists are not standing in one place, and everything is developing. So the lastly developed system that we could today very easily use in our farms is online hydroponic calculators available. So you can find this as an app for your mobile phones, and you can also use it online by via internet. So I'm presenting to you one example of that kind of hydroponic calculator. It is called sciencehydroponics.com site. I have taken it from there. I like it very much. It's very useful and very handy. It's very easy to understand. So even from the beginning, when you start, it helps you, it suggests you different recipes for different crop types. And you, based on your available ingredients, could choose which recipe you want. Then, based on that recipe and available macro and micronutrients, you are selecting them. It calculates the amounts and calculates for you the EC in the system if you will add following amounts of nutrients. And what will be your system pH? But prior to seeing that results, you need to give a command to this program and set up the target EC. And if this target EC will be exceeded or lower in the end, system will automatically notify you and will even propose what to change in order to reach it. So next step, this system is helping you and giving you a chance to calculate the cost of your nutrient solution. Based on the prices on the market, you can put the prices per kg or per liter of each nutrient, and it will calculate what will cost for you your final solution. If you see that it's too high, you can replace some of the nutrients with another nutrients which is cheaper, and etc. You can play with it before starting. And in the end, by pressing this button calculate, you are getting the final result that is giving you the exact numbers of each nutrient that you should use in order to mix and make a final solution. This is the easy way how to handle it. Of course, this is not 100% reliable. So you should again, as an owner, test it while growing. All the system should be under full control. It is very important because, as I said earlier, we don't have any chance to play without controlling the system. Otherwise, our plants can die, or we can start the process when we'll lose a lot of money. So this is table just in order to give you an understanding that different plants has different requirements on pH level and on EC level. So this is an average, of course, but if you go more deeply into the details, these numbers also changed based on the growing stage. The different EC and pH, pH is not so much changing, but EC requirement is changing much during the vegetation period at different stages of development. So this is the equipment that I was telling you about, and I have already demonstrated to you different kinds of equipment for measuring these indicators. So we have not so much time, and I now need to move to and tell you about different other types of growing media. As you can see, we have chances to grow in aquaponics, in hydroponics, Grodin technology, Hemoponics, Unitaponics, aggregataponics, all of them ponics, because of the hydroponics. The basic, again, is nutrient solution. And all of the systems are based on that nutrient solution that we are preparing. So that's why I told you before going to this growing media why we need and why it's important nutrient solution. So the alternative growing media requires 4 qualities that it should have. First, the growing media should let us and our plant to be able to be fixed and grow on it. So it should use its roots and grow by standing on that growing media. So the growing media should let us to have proper provision of the air to the roots of the plants. Because, you know, roots are going in between the rock wool, the gravel, the perlite and the straw, etc. And they need sufficient amount of air. So this growing media should give us possibility to access the nutrient solution very easily. It should not hold whole nutrient solution, and it should share very easily with the plant for growing. And lastly, some examples of liquid non-aggregate hydroponic systems it should have. I have put in here, I have added here and sharing with you my personal experience, because from 2015 up to 2017 I was leading the project that was involved in some of these activities like aquaponics, aggregataponics, and deep flow hydroponics. So this is an example of floating beds. The basic of it is that you can see the styrofoams are floating on top of the water, and the water is filled with a nutrient solution. The nutrient solution is providing necessary amount of nutrients for the plants. So you can see this picture has been taken from the internet, but this picture is my picture where we have grown these plants, and you can see almost similar. So this system is reminding you, you are right, Aztecs in 1100, in 11th century, Aztecs were using this, but what they were putting in here, the dirt, the soil. But in our case, we don't put anything, and it's just fixed here in specific styrofoam. So another one is aggregataponics. This has been tested by my team and me also, when we have grown plants in washed and grinded ground gravels in order to avoid the problem with plant stem while passing through the gravel. The next one is Hemoponics, when you can use different kind of crop straw, and this straw is playing the role when it's absorbing all the nutrients with the solution, liquid nutrients, and plays the role as a sponge. It takes it, but due to its spacing, it gives good aeration to the plant roots. The next one is Hydroponics, is presented with perlite to use, and perlite is very light in itself, but the best with perlite is that it is very light and it absorbs a lot of nutrient solution, but at the same time it gives easily back to the plant. So the aeration of the perlite is very high. The next one is Grodon technology, when ready-made mineral wool is available, and this mineral wool is used for growing of plants. You can see here an examples, and via these pipes, each plant placed here in the hole, and this cubes is placed in here later, is sucking the nutrient solution that we have been already talking about. Also, another way of growing plants in hydroponics is when you have lifted the plants and the roots are sprayed with the water within every 30 seconds. Again, same nutrient solution and combination of air, oxygen for the plants. The next one is Aquaponics, is something where I have been also working. Aquaponics is more organic way of growing plants, where you have in the system the fish, and you are not using any fertilizers in order to feed the plants. The activeness of the fish is giving the result in nitrification of the system that is giving necessary nutrients for the plants. So the system is basically made like this, where fish water is directly circulating to the plants, and after it's drained, it's collected and comes back to the fish. So the system feeds itself, and you don't need to add or to pour any additional fertilizer in the system. This system is very vulnerable because it's dependent on heat and also dependent on electricity. The system should constantly run. This is basically what we've been dealing with. As you can see, this is floating beds. This is aggregatoponics. This is aquaponics. This was our farm where I've been working and implementing the project. So, in aquaponics system, all the water should be oxygenized and aeration should take place. The fish that we have used was carp, but the best result is possible to get if you can find a tilapia. They are very much and quickly growing and gives better feed for the plants. And this is how we've been growing in aggregatoponics. And you can see newly seeded transplanted plants are growing well. We have tested different plants and all of them is given very good results. You can see how it was looking. So everything should be under control, the temperature system, otherwise it will be difficult to get the good results out of the work. Thank you for your attention. Hope this was interesting and useful for you and your operations.